This week on the video version of the Business of Tech, Kaseya's CEO gives us insight into financial incentives, age and gender as variables on returning to work, and unemployment benefits aren't, the Biden EO and the opportunity within, IT provider profit data isn't great, so let's look at the landscape, and Windows 365, the cloud PC, it's here, and we care a lot. Hit that like and subscribe, and here are this week's stories. So the Biden administration has told the Russian government to disrupt ransomware groups operating within its borders, per a White House statement. CISA has released an analysis of its risk and vulnerability assessment programs for fiscal year 2020. It looks at the top findings in the assessments it's done and maps them to MITRE's attack framework. Palo Alto's Unit 42 has analyzed REvil's tactics and found them to be actually pretty basic. Phishing, credential stuffing, RDP servers, etc. They prove they don't need advanced techniques. The easy ones still work. Speaking of REvil, Kaseya has released the security update for their VSA and restored their SaaS solution. That said, a 6-year-old flaw has surfaced that's still around, per Krebs on security. Also of note, Bloomberg is reporting that Kaseya executives were informed of critical issues between 2017 and 2020, and multiple staff either quit or were fired over inaction. And speaking of ransoms, 2 new trends in the KELA Threat Intelligence Study of Ransomware as a Service. First, one-man band operations have almost, quote, completely dissolved due to the lucrative nature of the business. And second, a growing area of recruitment is in negotiators, the person who extorts victims to pay a ransom. And revisiting old topics, SolarWinds themselves has a new zero-day. This time in their ServeU managed files transfer and ServeU secure FTP products, used by a single threat actor against, quote, a limited, targeted set of customers. China's cyberspace regulator has announced any company with more than 1 million users needs to go through a security review before offering shares overseas. The goal? To prevent the foreign listings from allowing an avenue for foreign government influence into the companies, and therefore into China. Microsoft paid $13.6 million in bug bounties in the past year. Jack Cable of the Krebs Stamos Group has launched a new tool that tracks ransomware payments called Ransomware, W-H-E-R-E. Also newly launched, New York City has become the first major city to open a real-time operational center to protect against cybersecurity threats. It's a combination of 292 members sharing intelligence, including NYPD, Amazon, IBM, the Federal Reserve Bank, and others. For the previous 2 years, the effort was entirely virtual. And on people, KnowBe4 says 1 in 3 employees are likely to fall for a phishing scam. Now, why do we care? A growing trend is the elimination of the one-man operation. So ransomware is ahead of IT services, a space seemingly a long way from eliminating one-man operations. I will comment directly on those employee reports. It's my observation that there's almost always a story after about employees warning executives about what happened. That's not the story. The story should be how executives are not incentivized to prioritize security, and providers are the ones who should be asking that of their vendors. On China, this is important, as while Russia is generally thought to contain the bulk of threat actors, China's of note too, and they are moving on their own data security regulations. On the surface, it's financially driven, but there would be real irony if they have data protection rules far sooner than the US does. The other big news over the weekend, the executive order signed on Friday. The EO is focused on a number of areas, including scrutiny of large corporate mergers, the limitation of non-compete clauses, and looks to reestablish net neutrality standards rolled back by the Trump administration. Also notable, the FCC is tasked with bringing back the broadband nutrition label, designed to standardize the format providers display price, data allowances, and performance information. One of the areas the EO focus on is in the right to repair, those new rules requested from the Federal Trade Commission, specifically including cell phone manufacturers. Also last week, the FCC was told to reevaluate the rules for minimum broadband speed by a government watchdog in a new report, as small businesses require more bandwidth than the current 25.3 standard. While we're on laws, Colorado passed a comprehensive data privacy law, signed into law on July 7th. Now, why do we care? Slow moving, but this trend is good for small companies. What's here is generally focused on the big and slowing them down. That should make more opportunities for those of us focused in the smaller business world. Regulation is coming, and here's hoping most of it is good, despite not much voice from the small providers. So let's run through a group of data points showing recovery with a number of bumps. The Office of National Statistics says GDP has grown by 0.8% in May, which is linked to lifting COVID-19 restrictions, but is lower than previous month's growth of 2.4%. Chip shortages are cited as a drag on a number of sectors, and that will include PCs. IDC's data says shipments of PCs are up 13.2% in Q2 2021 over 2020, but buying trends are tapering off, down to 13% growth rate versus 55.9% last quarter. 77% of American respondents to new research said their IoT project was at best only somewhat successful in meeting expectations and realizing benefits, but 86% still plan increased investments. Over one-third, 36% of American organizations have decreased their investment plans in IoT, and 33% have canceled their IoT initiative altogether as a result of COVID-19, a figure considerably higher than their UK counterparts at 19%, according to a new study of IoT adoption commissioned by global connectivity specialist ESI. Only about 20% of B2B buyers said they hope to return to in-person sales, even in sectors where field sales models have traditionally dominated, such as pharma and medical products, McKinsey said. Video use in business is going way up. Global enterprise video market size is projected to grow from $16.4 billion in 2020 to $25.6 billion by 2025 at a compound annual growth rate of 9.3% during the forecast period, according to Markets and Markets research from 2020. And in all of that, IT provider profitability is down. Per global data, 50% of the top 20 providers reported year-on-year revenue decline, and 9 saw a drop in net earnings. That's a 14.6% decline across the group in net earnings, and 40% of those had double-digit decline in net earnings for the year. So why do we care? Sure, that last data is very large providers, but that's not a great sign. The sugar high of PC sales didn't last long, did it? Makes sense why Microsoft is putting out a new Windows in that context. There's a lot in the market that's shifted. The way buying and thus selling is done, the types of technology used, and the types of services needed to support customers. I included the video stat to show an investment in new technologies. Companies are changing their behaviors, and there are opportunities to be found out there. What I'm highlighting is both that the old ways may not work, and to not assume it's just out there for the taking. The state of the market is dynamic, which also means the floor under you is not so solid. A study into the use of search engines, social media, and aggregators to access news shows that the tools can actually create more diverse information diets. Researchers from the University of Oxford and Liverpool analyzed web tracking data on around 3,000 UK news users, quoting the research. Indeed, it may be that exposure to conflicting partisan views, rather than overexposure to like-minded views, will offer a better explanation for the negative outcomes, like polarization, that are sometimes associated with distributed media use. Similarly, although consuming news from a variety of outlets may offer some benefits, some may simply be more comfortable with a world where most people only access news from impartial sources like the BBC, where differing views are often recognized but presented in a certain way. Now, why do we care? I found this particularly interesting because of the idea of information bubbles and the tone of media. I'm biased too. I'm a media organization now. Here's the missing question for me. How are we, culturally, investing in media literacy? Is a lack of investment in media literacy actually costing us money as business owners too? If the population at large is less capable of understanding media, what does that mean for our marketing? This is why we care about understanding media consumption. It's part of our marketing efforts. Another angle on remote work? Age is a factor. Younger workers want to be in the office. Quoting Axios, a whopping 40% of college students and recent graduates prefer fully in-person work, according to a new poll by Generation Lab, a polling and research firm that tracks trends affecting youth. Another 39% want a hybrid workplace, 19% want to work remotely, and 3% said they have no preference. Why? Community, per 74% of those respondents. That's different from the rest of the workforce. Just 12% of all office workers want to go back full-time. There's other concerns too. Qualtrics asked employees in the U.S. for theirs. And the top two are being socially awkward, followed by following proper social etiquette, and more than 1/3 of respondents said they would choose a touchless greeting. Age again matters. The older, the more uncomfortable with working in the same enclosed space. Gender is a variable too. 79% of men had a positive work from home experience when compared with 37% of women, per McKinsey. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 3 mothers said they are thinking about downshifting their career or leaving the workforce entirely. I've linked to a deeper dive in Recode. As for the shortage of workers, Bloomberg is reporting that new J.P. Morgan Chase data indicates that removing unemployment benefits has made little difference in getting workers to return. 2 longer pieces I want to direct listeners to. First, Wired has a piece on which day is best to go back in the office. Turns out there isn't one. It's a cultural set of choices. The second is a New Yorker article about sustainable remote work. Again, the key? Culture. It's a deep dive into REO, or results-only work environments. Now, why do we care? I do love hard problems because they usually have multiple solutions, and solving them is generally profitable. Short-term justifications for the labor shortage, like unemployment benefits, are a distraction and not backed by data. I keep covering this to provide the tools to build your own culture as well as help your customers, because the changes to work will be driven by technology. That's what makes it an opportunity. String this together. Philosophies like REO are implemented with culture, people, and process, and enabled by technology. Those that string these capabilities together will excel, and it's why we care so much about exploring the variables. Let's talk lobbyists for a minute. Politico covers the decline of the Internet Association, which is one of Silicon Valley's active lobbyists. Internal dysfunction combined with a larger fragmentation of technology's lobbying efforts have made the group irrelevant, per one congressional aide. Many technology companies have shifted to their own direct lobbying efforts. Meanwhile, a new announcement. Carl Palachuk, owner of Small Biz Thoughts and well-known MSP author, has announced an organizational meeting for the National Society of IT Service Providers. The announcement at nsitsp.org includes a set of proposed legislation for IT services. Now, why do we care? One on the way up and one on the way down. With regulation coming, the first story is about understanding how larger companies have used lobbyists, and the second, an opportunity for providers to do something. In the interest of transparency, I'll be at that meeting on July 21st. Will you? Want to ask, why do we care? T-shirts, stickers, water bottles, and even aprons. Pick up some of our great stuff at the link in the description below and support the show directly. Finally, I want to quote the Miami Herald in an interview with Kaseya CEO Fred Vokola, talking about their recent breach. Quote, Vokola said Kaseya, which is privately held and employs 275 workers at its downtown Miami headquarters, will likely, quote, lose a few points of growth in the aftermath of the hack, but that its long-term trajectory remains the same. The firm said in May it plans to hire 500 workers through 2022, a plan Vokola said remains in place. Quote, the part of our business that got hit is an important one, but a small one, he said. We have 1,600 people worldwide and $400 million in recurring revenue. We might go from a 28% annual growth rate to 26 or 25%, but I haven't really thought about those numbers as much. Right now, I'm trying to make sure every single one of our customers gets back online. End quote. Why do we care? It would be easy to jump on this as some smoking gun about their lack of investment in security. I think that's a red herring. The main point is this: the metric he wants the world to know about is his growth metric. His success is measured by his board and his investors, and what they care about is annual growth rate. He is absolutely focused on getting past this issue, but he has not forgotten what he is measured on. He's just been busy and not focused on it as much. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Want different outcomes? Find out from your vendors how executives are compensated in keeping your business secure to your level of satisfaction. Vocala's answer is going to be the same for most private equity-backed software companies. Growth is the key metric. Now use that knowledge and do something different. Maybe the only way to win is not to play. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency has a new head. Jen Esterly has been confirmed as the new head by the U.S. Senate. This fills a vacant position since November. The Australian Cybersecurity Centre has refreshed their Essential 8 implementation guide, making all 8 now essential. The ACSC is specifically focused on Windows-based Internet-connected networks, acknowledging that for other environments, there may be more appropriate guides. Trend Micro is reporting that 84% of U.S. organizations have been hit with ransomware or phishing attacks, and 50% rate themselves ineffective at handling them. Microsoft, meanwhile, has been going door to door in Brazil and Latin America to handle the TrickBot malware. They've been replacing routers. That said, signs are the group is alive and well, even despite last year's takedown by U.S. Cyber Command. They're updating their operations and using a new tool. Interpol is asking for more collaboration between police and industry, acknowledging the problem is, quote, too large of a threat for any entity or sector to address alone. The magnitude of this challenge urgently demands united global action, end quote. Facebook has added a payout time bonus to their bug bounties. A bonus if more than 30 days have passed since Facebook first received the bug for payout. Gmail has added support for the BIMI security standard. This allows companies that have implemented standards like DMARC, DKIM, and SPF to show authenticated logos inside email clients. The initiative is designed to improve email sender authenticity. At present, Yahoo, AOL, and Fastmail are the providers who support the standard, and only DigiCert and Entrust can issue the appropriate certificates, although BIMI expects that to grow. And it appears REvil is down. As of Tuesday morning, their sites were offline. It's not clear why. Some experts believe evidence suggests a planned takedown of their infrastructure, but we may never know full details. It could be law enforcement, the Russian government, or the group themselves. REvil can be linked to 42% of all recent ransomware attacks. Now, why do we care? There's so much here. Flip that trend microstat. Only 50% of organizations can defend themselves. The opportunity and the risk in one stat. In terms of resources, so much to leverage. Grab Australia's Essential 8 guidance. Learn more about the security standards in email to help with sender authenticity and help address phishing. Pushing adoption on both are standard tactics we need. I mentioned the bug bounty details because of noise security leaders like Jason Slagle have been making, how bug bounty programs are important and drive part of the solution. I've mentioned financial incentives for executives. Bug bounty programs are financial incentives for security researchers. They're both linked to disclosure notifications too. 2/3 of researchers polled had found bugs but not reported them. And the number one reason was the potential for legal backlash. Having a formal program and recognizing the incentive matters. If you're not a researcher, but instead a customer, adding the question of, do you have a bug bounty program, to your list of critical questions will make a difference. This is all about financial incentives, after all. Microsoft's Inspire event was this week, and let's cover 2 announcements out of the event. First, a preview of Azure Active Directory Privileged Identity Management integration with Azure Lighthouse. The idea is just-in-time access to Azure services, and it lasts up to 8 hours, after which the partner is removed from the system. This only on-demand security is part of a zero-trust style implementation. But the big news is Windows 365. Referred to as a cloud PC, it's a fully cloud-based desktop experience that runs on top of Azure Virtual Desktop and will be available August 2nd. Pricing has not been revealed. You can connect to your cloud PC from any device, so that includes Macs, iPads, Linux, and the like. Deployment can be managed via Intune. 2 versions, Enterprise and Business. Enterprise is designed and capable of being integrated with Microsoft Endpoint Manager, where Business is for individual users and small businesses who need it standalone. Diagnostics, statistics, and complete management plus security configuration of devices is done directly from Endpoint Manager. There's a watchdog service for running diagnostics and providing alerts when checks fail. Users connect using a standard remote desktop client or an embedded client in a browser. The product includes rollback, so you can get back to previous versions of files, for example. Instant boot, ability to pick back up from another device right away, and full customization. Also noted, it's a zero-trust architecture, including cloud storage of data, multi-factor authentication, conditional access policies, least privilege access, security baselines, and in data encryption during transit and storage. Management of the deployment is integrated into Microsoft Endpoint Manager. One of the motivating forces, Microsoft noticed that 80% of their Azure Virtual Desktop users were using a third party to help manage their installations. Microsoft is specifically citing the product for business from one person all the way up to thousands of employees. The differentiation, ease of use, and management. So, why do we care? I'm spending a whole episode on this because I think we care a lot. Microsoft is taking away a lot of the actual management of devices with this move. You can build a complete Windows environment that runs entirely on top of another environment that you likely don't care about. It can be entirely unmanaged. Or simple. Chromebooks, iPads, take the complexity away from a user or give them the actual flexibility. For most users, if you simplify down to a browser, an Office suite, and web access, you're done for most, and you don't have any of the annoying overhead of a full modern computer with the PC and OS on top of it. In this configuration, Microsoft Endpoint Manager is your RMM, and it enforces policy against the operating system as an approach, rather than agent added to the operating system. This puts in context of my recent comments about RMM. Why add an attack vector when you don't need to anymore? Now project out a possible Chromebook competitor. Dream of a Surface device that just runs remote desktop. Here you have a fully managed experience even without having to control the endpoint. Even today, this makes every virus-infested home computer now a viable option for small businesses to use. And that example proves the new model. A business can run entirely in Microsoft's cloud in a controlled, managed way, yet also not trust any endpoints. That's the zero trust architecture cited, and this is a simple way to accomplish that goal. Does this instantly change the landscape? No, but yes. Sure, your day-to-day operation didn't change, but a direction is pretty clear on the way you should be heading if you want to change the game for security. A zero trust architecture is within reach. I'm redoing my own threat calculus on this. Are you? Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.